The next 5 minutes, my story. So, close the door back there so we can get it. Thanks, Jimmy. Okay, so this is a story about yesterday. Okay? I had to come down here to drop something off to Escrow, a demand, and so I was driving down the Parkway, and as you know, every once in a while they have a radar cop set up there. And so I was on full self-driving, but I had it on the hurry mode. And so what happens is I was probably going a little fast. So sure enough, as soon as I come by him, he follows me over, pulls me over, comes up to me and says, "Do you know why I pulled you over?" And I said, "Is it possible I was speeding?" And he goes, "Yes, it was. You're going 60 in a 45. So I'm thinking, okay, this is a motorcycle cop. And motorcycle cops are there for one reason, to write tickets, right? Now, if you get pulled over by a car, the only way you get a ticket is if you have a bad attitude. However, if you get pulled over by a bike, okay, a motorcycle, you're basically getting a ticket, right? But I'm thinking, I've got this perfect record, I gotta keep this perfect record. I'm gonna try anything. So I'm thinking, Hail Mary, what can I possibly say that's going to get me out of this ticket? I mean, I can't cry, that's not going to work. That never works, by the way. So I said, okay. I said, "Officer." So he asked me for my driver's license, proof of insurance, I give it to him. I said, "Officer, before you go, can I ask you a question?" He goes, yeah. And I said, "We're traveling in a western direction, is that correct?" And he goes, "Yes." I said, "I'm traveling in a western direction, and you said 60 miles an hour?" He goes, "That's correct." I said, "Well, the Earth travels at 1,000 miles an hour in an easterly direction." I said, "Therefore, technically, my defense is that I'm traveling minus 940 miles an hour." So he looks at me and says, "I'll be with you in just a minute." I'm thinking, okay, that didn't work. So he goes back to his car, and he's there for a few minutes, and he comes back up, and he says, "Mr. Wright, here's your driver's license, your proof of insurance. I'm going to give you a warning today." I'm going, wow, this is great, I get a warning. And so that stupid story got me a warning instead of a ticket, okay? But the reason I'm telling you the story is because I train in real estate very similar. That sometimes you have to do a Hail Mary on things in real estate. Like for instance, if you're at an open house and somebody comes in and they're saying they're working with another agent, you can just say, "Oh great, look through the house, that's fine." Or on their way out, you can say, "Any questions?" and then throw a Hail Mary. Why not? Because if you get this client, it's super valuable. So I would always try a Hail Mary. And you say, "Well, what's a Hail Mary to somebody who already has an agent?" I'd say, first of all, you said you had an agent, but they're not with you today. If I was your agent, I guarantee you I'd be with you at all your open houses. So let me ask you a question. Do you think, and do this with a smile, you have to have fun with it, you can't be too serious, because do you think you have the very best single agent in the entire universe? Now, if they say yes, I would say, "I disagree, they're not here with you today. Give me a chance to show you I'm the best agent in the universe." However, they say, "I don't know about the best one in the universe," say, "Give me a chance." Why not? Why not? You never know. Because the average commission we get in this company right now is about $30,000. So you think that if you were able to hit a Hail Mary once in a while, you make $30,000. But that's not even close to true. Because you get that person's business now, and later they tell people about you, it might be worth $200,000 or $300,000 or $400,000 through the lifetime of your career. So this story is meant to say, try a Hail Mary in real estate sometimes when you have nothing to lose. Now, this story doesn't quite end yet. I drop off everything at Escrow. I'm on my way back, and sure enough, I see the lights behind me and the motorcycle, and I pull over. So I pull over, he walks up to me, and I said, "Oh, Officer Wilcott." He goes, "Yes." I said, "Was I speeding?" He goes, No, it seems like you've learned your lesson. You're traveling 45 miles an hour in a 45 mile an hour zone. However, the Earth travels in 1,000 miles in an easterly direction. Therefore, you're technically going 1,045 miles an hour. I'm going to have to write you a ticket." And at that time, the first smile I got out of him, he smiled at me and said, listen, I saw your car coming back. I remember the license plate. I could not help myself. So anyway, now if Officer Wilcott pulls you over, don't try that story. He's going to say, I've heard that before. Make up a new story. But here's the whole point of this story, just to get started. And that is, sometimes you have to throw a Hail Mary in real estate and life. And it's really fun when it works out, like it worked out for me. Okay, by the way, I'm not going to sit here and tell you about all the Hail Marys that didn't land, because those stories aren't as fun. So, okay, let's get started. Oh, by the way, I want to show you, this was the original picture that I used to show this little slide here. It's kind of grainy, has a Corvette, it's on a country road. So I took this picture just for my first slide here, and I dumped it in AI, and I said, AI, I don't want a Corvette, I want a white Tesla S, and can you make it higher definition, and you can put it in a road in Mission Viejo. So this is what came out. Okay. Wow. Oh, by the way, put my license plate as Tesla. That took me 60 seconds. This class isn't on AI, we've already done that. If you want that class, you can look at it in 805 Academy. Just some of the things you can do in AI. This took less than a minute for me to change it from, if you go to the backspace, from that terrible one right there that doesn't really work to this one right here that does work. Okay. Okay, now let's get into what we're here for, now that the training's half over. I want to talk about what are clients looking for in an agent. So a few years ago, NAR did a study. They took 1,000 buyers and 1,000 sellers after they closed escrows, and they got them together and they asked them all, what are you looking for in an agent? They had a long questionnaire. A long questionnaire. By the way, Amy, did you turn that thing on yet? Okay. So a long questionnaire of what they wanted, and then they debriefed them to come up with what's really important. Now, of all the studies that NAR does, there's every once in a while one that's really good. This was one. Another really good one they did, we're not going to talk about it now, but what are the 5 reasons why most agents fail in the business? We'll talk about that another time. But this one is a really good study. So, let me ask you this. What do you think, here's one of the interesting things. What buyers were looking for and what sellers were looking for in an agent, same thing. Okay, same thing. That surprised them, I think, obviously, because they did 1,000 sellers and 1,000 buyers. So what do you think that buyers and sellers were looking for? Now, for some of the people in the team that's been on my team for a long time, you know the answer. Don't give the answers because this will be kind of boring if you just give the answers. But what do you think they were? Just, but throw it out.
Good listener.
Listener, okay. Okay, do you know that years ago that there was a poll done by Circle Magazine? Anyone even remember Circle Magazine? Circle Magazine, by the way, that's not one of the answers, but Circle Magazine did a study of the best characteristics, personality characteristics, and the worst ones. Okay, what do you think came out number 1 as the best personality trait? Listener. Number 1. So, even though that's not the answer to this question, it literally is one of the best things we can be as human beings for personality trait. Now, there was 175 traits. What do you think was the last trait? The worst trait you can have as a person? The worst trait. Anyone want to throw it out?
Dishonesty.
Dishonesty, okay. Actually, that wasn't even one. But the last one was passive aggressiveness. Okay, passive aggressive. Now, first of all, we're 7 minutes into training. I haven't said one thing about what we're here to train on, so let me kind of get going. But, okay, listener, what else? Anyone want to throw out some ideas? Lisa?
Strategy.
Strategy, okay.
Integrity.
Integrity.
Communication.
I-N-T-E-R-G. Okay, what else?
Communication.
What?
Good communication.
Communication, okay, communication. Okay, keep throwing them out.
Work ethic.
Availability, did you say?
Accountability.
Accountability, okay. These are good.
Availability too.
Yeah.
Accountability, availability. Okay, what else?
Advocating.
Advocator, okay. Okay, so anything else you want to throw out here?
Honesty.
Honesty, okay. So let's kind of go through some of these. H-O-N-E-S-T-Y. Okay, so here's what's really interesting about what they came up with. First of all, not strategy, that wasn't one of them, although it kind of ties into one of them. Integrity, that wasn't one. You know why? Because they assume you have integrity. That's not a high level. That's a low bar. They're looking for high bar things. So communication, that's one. But it goes into more detail, and I'll tell you what it is. Accountability, no, but that's a good one. Okay, availability, no. Honesty, again, they expect that. Advocator, not necessarily, but it might tie in. So when they did this, I was like you, there's no way I would have come up with what they were looking for. It's just really hard. But let me tell you, they're looking for three things. And here's what was so interesting about the study is these three things stood out so much further than anything else. There were three things, okay? And after that, there was nothing close, okay? There was nothing close. So one of these is predictable, and that's the communication. The other two are not even predictable. No one said them. We threw out 15 things, not one person said them. So what are they looking for? So first of all, communication is the one that I thought we might get and we got. And let me ask you this. Well, let me just tell you this, because I don't think you'll get this either. The one metric I use for communication, especially when it comes to text messages or phone calls or anything else, is that if when I get a phone call, my next words to my clients are, oh, thank you for calling me back, that means I'm doing a good job. However, if I get a phone call and I say, oh, you want an update on things? Well, let me tell you where we're at. I failed. They should never have to call me to find out what's going on with the transaction. I tell my clients when we start that I always keep you 3 steps ahead. Most clients don't want to know everything down the road. If they do, we can do that, but 3 steps ahead and in detail, okay? And once you start down that road with them, they're going to understand that, hey, listen, I'm in good hands. And guess what? They don't call you or text you or email you. You're the one putting it out, not them, you. So they want communication, but they want it consistent and they want it in the form they want it in. So how many of you, here's a question to ask yourself, ask your clients, how do you like communicating? Now, so some do. Now, here's the thing. What are they most likely going to say? What do you think? Text, you're right. Most are going to say text. And I think that's true that they like text messages. But when we have something, and text messages is by far my most common communicator to the people on my team and friends and things like that. But there's some times that we rely on text too much. What does text not tell us? It doesn't give us the tone. It doesn't give us, there's not somebody on the other side. It doesn't give us the answer to go back and forth. There was somebody one time, that person's actually in this room, but I won't out this person, comes into me and this person reads this text message to me and she goes, I can't believe this person read this text message, sent me this text message. And so I read the text message and she read it to me, she or he, whoever it was, a person read it to me, and they basically kind of put the tone in it they thought that was meant to send. I said, well, what was actually said wasn't that bad. What do you mean? I think that, she's calling me out on this or whatever. And I said, let me read that to you. So I read it back. I read the exact same words, but in a really nice, sweet tone. And the person said, that wasn't the way it was meant. I said, how do you know? So that's what we lose in text messages. I can tell you, even with people here in the room I've sent text messages to, that they would say, what? Or they thought I was upset with them or I was whatever. And because that's what happens to text messages. There's no tone. Now, I believe in text messages, but be careful. Sometimes you need to pick up the phone and call. Sometimes you need to stop by. Always ask them how they want it. And then I got to tell you, if you've got clients that are husband and wife, you need to communicate with both as often as you can. Okay, put them both in the chain so they get it. Unless they tell you not to, make sure you communicate to both, or you're going to alienate one. Okay? So again, ask them what they're looking for, but keep them updated. And so one of the things that we do in our team, a lot of people have done this, is we have 10 slides 10 videos that we send out to people doing during the transactions. So that just before we come, like for instance, before we do a listing presentation, a slide goes out and tells them what they can expect at the listing presentation, okay? And then once we get the offer accepted, the next inspections we talk about, which would be the termite inspection, third-party inspection, appraisal, we tell them what's coming up, okay? And so that's all really good, and that can help as well. So I like using text, video, obviously phone calls. Stopping by sometimes can work too. But the main thing is that we find out how they want to communicate it and we do it with them. Okay, so number 2, this next one is pretty interesting, and it really changed when I heard this years ago, a little bit of how I do things. The second thing they want to know their options. Now, here's what's interesting. What they said was, they want to know what your opinions are, but not first. First, they want to know their options, okay? And so I always look at this as I don't feel like I have a right to give my opinion until I give them all their options. And once you give them all their options, then they really want your opinion. But they want to know their options first. So let me give you an example. I'll create this. We have a buyer, and they've looked at a property, and the property is $1.5 million. I'm making this up. A property, a single-family house in Mission Viejo. It's been on the market for 10 days. The agent said there's another 1 or 2 potential offers, but nothing yet. And so I go back to my clients and I go, okay, let's write an offer, and we have some options here, okay? I said one option is we could go in low, really low, okay? Like maybe present like $1,450,000 or something like that. Now, if we got the offer, that would be really great because we know we got it at the lowest price possible. But the negatives of that is we're probably going to alienate the seller, and if we really like this house, we're probably out of the running in the future for it, just because of that first insulting offer, okay? So, and that's also why I always like to ask my buyers, on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being best, how much do you like this home? So when they say 10, I'm going to say, let's write a 10 offer. If they say 5, write whatever you want. You're not that excited about it, okay? But usually they're going to say 8, 9, or 10, and so that's where you need to get them to represent an 8, 9, or 10 offer. Because they're not going to like it when they don't get it, especially if you didn't give them a little bit like, hey, listen, you're writing a 7 offer, and this is a 10 house for you, okay? So, first of all, I'd say, so the first thing, go low. The other thing we do is like go way over asking price, way over asking price. Now, in normal markets, you could just pay asking price, but in this market, go way over asking price. The problem with that is, okay, is that when you go in way over asking price, what's going to happen is that you might overpay for the property. And then the other thing is that agent might use your offer to bump other offers up or get a bidding war going. So I'm not sure I would go in too far over. What I'd probably do is talk to the listing agent, find out what they're looking for, find out what they got, and go in closer to full price on the offer. And then we'll possibly get a counter offer anyway and be prepared. But if we shoot our whole kind of wad to start with, there's no place to go. Now, I'm just making this up. You have to create your own scenario, how you do your own thing. But the idea is I give them all their options, but they actually also have my opinion. And because I give the opinion with the options, they'll probably take my option. They don't always, but almost always, they take your option, okay? So, any questions on that? You know how you can just kind of give the options? Okay, now the third one, this was a little surprising to me, but not really, is the clients, they want cost estimates. They want to know how much it's going to cost. Imagine a client wanting to know how much a house is going to cost them. Come on. You know, you make an offer in the home, and that you should just buy the house. You should have endless money. You know, as agents, sometimes we don't think about that, but that's a really important thing. It's a really important thing. Not just what they can qualify for, but there's cost in the home above and beyond, whether you're a seller or a buyer, there's cost above and beyond the price itself. And so they want net sheets. Honestly, that should have been, if you asked me what 3 things that clients want, I would think that was one they'd want. But I would have never answered that way, just like nobody else here did. So for buyers, generally, their estimate's going to come from their lender, okay? The lender must give them a good faith estimate. That's the wording, good faith estimate. How soon must the lender give them that?
3 days.
3 days of what? You're right.
After they apply.
Yes, 3 days after a completed application, okay? So if they apply and it's not complete, they still have 3 days. 3 days after a completed operation, your lender will give them a good faith estimate, and for most buyers, that's going to be what they look at, okay? However, what we're going to look at is going to be the sellers, because we're the ones that are going to tell the sellers what they're going to make, okay? So 3 days after for a buyer. For a seller, okay, we can figure that out for them. Now, there's a few ways we can do net sheets, okay? Here's one that's what I call my quick and dirty. You're out in the, you're out showing them property or with them, and they say, hey, just roughly how much am I gonna make on this house, okay? So let me give you, you can do kind of math in your head or on your computer. So this is what I call my quick and dirty. Let's say it's $1 million property, okay? And I tell them, we think we can sell it $1 million, and then I times that by 0.94, okay, generally, sometimes more if I see more cost. And so what that's gonna be is, that's gonna be $940,000, okay? Now, what that 94 represents is a 5% commission, 1% closing cost, okay? So that's what they're gonna get, 940 minus, they owe 400 on it, okay? So you can do, this is what I call my quick and dirty. Don't take me to the bank on this one, but you wanted a quick big number, so I gave you a quick big number. 540 will be your net proceeds. Now, that's good when you're talking early on. You may want to put, make this 93.5%, depending on if you see things. Now, I tell them, this doesn't include prorations and extra repairs you might have or unforeseen things. This is just a quick and dirty on a good scenario that what you're going to get in your hands. So work with that. That gives you an idea as kind of a high number, okay? Now, a lot of times, that's enough for them right then. However, a lot of times when you're putting an offer together, sellers are more concerned about net proceeds than they are sales price because they have somewhere to go or something you have to do. So when that is the case, then what we need to do is we need to give them an actual net sheet. Now, there's a lot of ways we can do net sheets, okay? We can go to, and let me go back here. We can go to, what are the three that I had down here? I think I had three. Oh, we can go to the OCT app. You can put everything on there and it comes out. You can go to our zip forms. They got one on zip forms. CR has one. You can go and just ask Google for one, they can put one together. I put one together for myself years ago. I'm not sure it's completely up to date now, but I wanted my own, and so I put it on there. Now, one thing that when you're doing a net sheet for sellers, there's two kinds of net sheets, okay? One is, you're gonna give them all their costs without prorations. Without prorations. I really don't wanna get into giving proration. I don't know when they made their last payment, what their payment is, what the homeowner association dues are, when they paid their property taxes, and which one's coming up. And so usually when I give that, I give them a net sheet, but that net sheet, it'll say right in the top of it, does not include prorations of interest, taxes, or association dues. Okay, so I put those on there. It doesn't cover them. Okay, so now there's a couple things here, and I've got some handouts to hand out here. These are kind of like, what are the customary costs for buyers and sellers? So I've got some sheets that I passed out here, and these are the things that if you want to do net sheets, because if this is what sellers want, we need to be able to do this, okay? And I know that a lot of agents can get through this business for years and never do a net sheet. But if you're doing that, one of the three things they really want, you're not able to give them. And I know a lot of times we go to escrow and say, well, escrow, give us an estimated closing. Well, escrow should give you an estimated closing just before they close, and it will include prorations. But, the way you show your value is at the table that you can actually put together a net sheet. Or you can say, I'll go back to the office, I'll have one for you shortly, and you can put it together yourself, okay? That puts you at a much higher level. So if you look on there, those are some of the customary costs, okay, that sellers and buyers pay. We should know all of those. So when we're talking to our clients, when a client says, who pays for what, we should know. Now, we know that everything, commissions now even, everything is negotiable. We know that, okay? We just had an escrow on the team where the buyer paid for the entire escrow fee, okay? Whole escrow fee. That's great. They put that in there, so they did that. However, everything is negotiable, but there are things that are customary. It's customary that a seller pays the seller doc stamps, and it's customary that a seller pays generally commissions. It's customary that buyers pays for inspections, okay? So when these things are customary, then again, these are things that we want to make sure that when you're writing an offer, that we're consistent with what our customary fees are. So also, another thing I want to hand out to you guys is what's known as seller's cost estimates. So in other words, when you're doing a net sheet, like one of the things you need to know is what are the costs out there. And so this was a sheet that I had from a long time ago, but I sent it to April, and I said, April, update this sheet for me if there's anything on there that's wrong. And so this is an updated sheet that April gave us, or that April updated. So we have everything on there, okay? And so these are seller's costs. And what I suggest you guys do is keep this sheet, scan it, put it in your computer so you've got these things, you've got them ready. So when you want to do a net sheet, you can. Net sheets are pretty easy to do. I think they're kind of a lost art. I mean, if we look at some of the people that have been here for a while, Julie, when you were first in real estate, is every time you did a net sheet, we always did them, right? And we did them right at the table, right? Terry, I mean, we would just do them at the table and we had to do them.
By hand.
Huh? By hand, from memory, at the table, okay? Because offers were presented in person. Can you imagine that? Offers were presented in person, and then what would happen is, now, for the old agents, this is just no big deal, but for the newer agents, you would drive to a house on a January night when it's really cold, you'd present the offer, and you go out in your car and wait for a response, right? That's the way we did it for so many years, okay? And sometimes you had to have a good heater because it would get cold. And sometimes you'd be out there for 15 minutes, and sometimes you'd be out there for an hour and a half, right? So, but that's the way we did it. Business is so much easier now, so much easier. Send it through, let me know, right? But we had to do that. It also gave us a skill to present, which was really important, where today, there's still a skill on how to prepare an offer and put it together, but it's not nearly as important as how you can actually present it in person. Okay, has anyone here had an agent recently asked to present the offer in person? Have you had that lately? Okay, every once in a while you get that. Not very often, but you can. So these are costs that would be, if you want to figure out what they are, here's what they are, okay? So the next one I want to kind of show you is.
Can I ask a question?
Absolutely.
So, the net sheet for the seller also doesn't cover the capital gain that they have to pay?
No, it doesn't cover the capital gains that they may or may not have to pay. Now, so one of the things that we cover in a listing presentation, in fact, if you go to 805 Academy, we have a video on there, and I think you'll really like it. It's called Situation Room. Now, Situation Room is the video, and it lasts for about 45 minutes, and it literally takes you all through all the scenarios you may need to deal with. Property taxes, capital gains taxes, Prop 19, all these different things, okay? Death, if they got the property from the death, step-up basis, things like that. That video will cover everything you have. Because this is one of the things, that's such a great point, that when we go to a listing, the difference that a good agent makes is that here's what I think a typical agent does. Maybe they walk through the house with a seller, okay, maybe they don't. If they do, they probably don't do it the way you should. Then they sit down, they immediately want to go into, here's the comps, okay, and then maybe they have some kind of, flimsy presentation, and then they spend most of the time on trying to grind them to get to sign a listing contract, okay? But one of the most important parts of that meeting is say, tell me your situation. Now the Situation Room, you guys all know what that is, right? Situation Room is a place in the White House where when they're when the president's there, there's some actually famous pictures of Biden when they were after, who were they after? Can't remember who it was.
Osama and bin Laden.
Oh, yeah, Osama bin Laden. Literally, they were watching as they were the helicopter landing in the compound. They were watching from the Situation Room. Well, I call it the Situation Room because that's the most important part of a listing presentation, is to be there and go through all of those things. But we need to know that. Now, I know we can always take the easy way out and say, call your accountant on everything. There might be some other ramifications to this. No, we're supposed to know. Now, can we give accounting advice?
No.
Yes, we can. We just have to be right. Okay? So in other words, if somebody asks you with the capital gains and you say, yeah, right now, currently, if you're married and you've lived in the property 24 of the last 60 months, okay, you can exclude, not exempt, I mean, you can actually exclude or exempt $500,000. We can state that, right? Because it's right. What we can't do is give information that's wrong. Now, even when I know the information on capital gains or step-up basis or things like that, I always put, you should be in touch with your accountant to talk about that, okay? But I think he's going to tell you what I'm telling you, okay? So, we had a case which was Stephanie's, I think, a while back. And I remember Stephanie called me one night, this has been a few years ago, and she had a client that sold the property, and the client had only been there for about a year and a half and had a big gain, okay? Well, the property's in escrow, and the accountant told this seller that they're gonna have a big capital gains issue, okay? That's what the accountant told the seller. Then, you remember calling me on this one? So Stephanie calls me on this one. I said, well, tell me, what is the situation? Well, they've been here for a year and a half. The property's gone up so much, and they've got a huge gain in it, but they haven't lived there 24 out of 60 months. So the accountant says you got a gain. I said, well, where are they going to? They're going to Texas. Why are they going to Texas? Job transfer. Guess what? You go for a job transfer, that allows you to prorate those time, and they have all their capital gains covered. The accountant didn't know that, but I knew that and told them that. Now, and then I said, what did I tell you, Stephanie? Who did they have to talk to after that? Their accountant. Go back to your accountant and say some stupid real estate agent said this might be the case. Now today you could look it up on AI and give them the actual law. And AI is usually right, but not always, guys. So don't look at that AI is the gospel. AI tends to be accurate, but do not look at it as the gospel, and don't argue that it's never wrong, because it can be wrong. Okay, but it tends to be right. So went back, and guess what? They had the entire gain. She was a hero, because the attorney said, look what happened. But we found out. Now that attorney, who knows, or the accountant, might have forgot that was the reason they were moving, was for that job transfer, and might have missed that whole exemption. Might have cost them $30,000 or $40,000. So, okay. So there we go. Okay, escrow fees and costs. One of the things that I think that, and I want to cover this a little bit later, but we need to do is we need to look out for what our clients pay, right? We need to make sure that what they're paying is reasonable, okay? But we need to make sure that they're not being taken. So one of the things is that you should always know what your escrow fees are, or what a standard escrow fee should be, okay? And so like if you have an escrow fee and you have $1 million property, okay, what is going to be your base escrow fee, okay? Let's say the base escrow fee is $400, okay? And most base escrow fees are $300 to $500, okay? So let's say they're $400 base fee, and it's $2 per thousand, okay? So how much are they going to pay for at $1 million? They're going to pay $2,000. Okay, so their base fee, their base fee in that is going to be $2,400 that each side pays. Now there are some extra fees as well. That'll be actual fees that they have to pay that are reasonable. But what do we have to worry about with a lot of escrow companies? Not Regency, we never have had these, but what do some escrow fees charge? Garbage fees, absolutely. Okay, and so one of the things here is I have a sheet here. And this is what's known as garbage fees, that are some common garbage fees that escrow companies charge. Look out for this. When you get now you can do this 2 times. You can do this before you ever get, you go into escrow, or you can do it when they give you the estimated closing statement. But look at this for your clients. They put things on there all the time. I saw one a couple months ago. It was called a storage fee, $200. You know what that was when we called? We have to store these documents, and we do that for you, and so there's a charge for that. What do you mean there's a charge? You're required by law to store for 3 years if you're a broker and escrow, or 5 years as an independent. What do you mean? That's something you have to do by law. You don't charge us for that, okay? So these fees are absolutely ridiculous, okay, sometimes. Make sure they're not. I would say on a lot of closing statements, I can go in there and find anywhere between $100 and $300 or $400 of garbage fees. Not all. Reputable escrows don't do that. You're not going to find those on Regencies, but you're going to find them. You'll even find sometimes notary fees that there weren't as many signatures as they were. Now, if they do an outside service, it's hard to check that, okay? But ask them, and at least go through the list there and look and see if there's anything on there that's garbage, because I would bet you in at least half of all escrow closing statements, you're going to find garbage fees that just a simple phone call, you could get a couple $100 taken off for your client. Now, we're not trying to take anything off that's real, guys. We're not. That's not what we're trying to do. We're trying to take off stuff that isn't real, okay? And that's what you want to do, is the garbage fee. So, okay. So I think we've kind of covered this. I know we kind of hit the closing statements on, kind of quickly and stuff like that. But again, you've got everything you need right there in the handouts to kind of do closing statements and stuff. So we talked about three things. Remember what they were? One was communication the way the sellers want it. One is options. The third one was estimates of closing costs. Okay. So if you do those three things, what's going to happen? First of all, you're going to get your client back, most likely. And second of all, they're probably going to tell everybody else about you. I've said forever, the two most important ways to get a client back is one, is to do an amazing job when you work with them. Amazing job. Make the experience special. And number two, be really smart so they know that you are the person they call for all kinds of information. Even though we haven't sold for many years, I still have many clients calling me, asking me for advice. And what do you think about this and what do you think about that? So coming to classes like this, there's all kinds of classes at the board. Great classes. A lot of them you don't have to go to. They're Zoom classes. Read everything you can. Just try to take everything in. I mean, hey, look at YouTube videos. There's good stuff on YouTube videos. Start asking questions to AI all the time. Try your head has way more room for information than you'll ever need to know in this business. So again, just remember that. Create an amazing experience, okay? Make sure that all three of these things are included within it, okay? And then number two, make sure that you know this business. Now, if you're new in the business, and some of the people are in here new, and if they ask you if you're new, what are you going to tell them? Anyone want to try to role play this with me? Is anyone here that's new that wants to role play what they would say? Okay, well, let me tell you what I would say if I was new. Because new is the thing we're worried about. I would probably say, I'm new in the business, and let me tell you what my disadvantages are of that advantages. The disadvantages are that I may not know everything when you ask me a question. But let me tell you how I overcome that. I'm on a team that has 100 years experience, 300, 400 years, whatever it is. I'm with a company that has thousands and thousands of years of experience, okay? And then the other thing is, and so I may not have the answer right then, but I can get every answer you need, okay? And then here's the thing where the new agent can get you. You say, you know, a lot of agents that are very busy, first of all, they've kind of lost the passion for the business. I see that looking around. And also, they're very busy. So let's say they have 10 clients they're working with, and let's say I have 2. Do the math. Who gets more time? You working with me, or you working with somebody so busy they can barely have time to talk to you? So, you know, and that's a good one at the open house. Like, I know you may have a successful agent, so successful he can't attend open houses and show you property. So as a new agent, you have to have the ability to tell them why you are good. If you don't, they're going to think, I don't want somebody new. But if you can turn that negative into a positive, it works. You need to know, if you're doing a listing presentation against the farmer, you need to know how to compete against the farmer in that farm. Now, if you are the farmer, it's easy. You can say, I know this area, people come to me looking for properties, there's a huge advantage for me being that person. But what if you're not the farmer? What do you say? I say, listen, I can assure you one thing. If I take a listing in your area, okay, it will be my only listing. I will not have a divided loyalty between you and 2 or 3 other listings in here. You get everything. I'll be marking this home for everyone. I will not switch this listing for another listing that might be older or I need sold more. You get everything from me if you go in here. You have to have a way. Now, is that the best argument? I don't know if it's the best argument, but at least you're trying. At least you can overcome the farmer. Or do you want to lose every time you go against the farmer? Do you want to lose? Okay? Because the farmer is certainly going to use their knowledge and all their expertise and all the homes they've sold. They're going to use that, right, Derek? That's what you use. But you also know, I mean, she gets a lot of listings from her farm, but she also knows how to go in, and I can go into something that's not my farm, and I can still win that listing too. So, again, that's just these skills that you need to get, okay? Because you don't want to be, and I can tell you, I tell everyone the first year in real estate is you just need to get your nose bloodied. Do everything wrong, get your nose bloodied, because that's the way you learn, okay? The great thing about real estate is that this is kind of like, it's not like, you know, you play baseball and you get, you know, if you miss 1 out of 20 balls as an infielder, that means that you have a 950 average. That's terrible in baseball. Because you got a lot of chances, but you only made a couple errors, but that's bad. You only get so many chances. But guess what, in real estate, if you want to get more successful, just put yourself out in the arena and take more chances, okay? You may, your conversion rate may not be that good, but if you put yourself in the game more and more and more, you're gonna get better, first of all. And second of all, it's not about how many times we lose, it's about how many times we win. So you wanna win, play the game more. Do more open houses, do more pop buys, take on a bigger farm. Those are the things that'll put you in the arena to get more. Okay, so we talked about if you do these two things, what's going to happen. Now I want to talk about, I told you guys, this is a little teaser, but it's really important, I want to share it with you. That I told you that there's one question you should ask every client before you start a presentation. And I think this is just 101 from me, is what you do. The one question you ask is very simple. What are you looking for in a real estate agent? Why do you ask that question? Because before you present, before you're going to have their ear for the next few minutes, you want to know what to focus on. Now, you have a plan of what you're going to focus on anyway, if you're doing a buyer consultation or a seller consultation, right? You already have those things. But guess what? Everybody has a little bit different needs, okay? One buyer may have had a really bad experience with an agent and said the agent never called me back. So communication is really important to me. So another agent might have said, hey, listen, I used an escrow and I couldn't believe the costs on there. They were so outrageous, okay? So guess what? When they tell you what they're looking for, you have that next whole presentation period to cover it, right? Cover everything you're going to cover, but you're going to highlight and make sure in your own way that you really cover what they're looking for. I mean, this is kind of like, I think this is easier for the guys, because guys, like for instance, in marriages, we're usually what I consider stuck and stupid most of the time, okay? However, we're really good about taking instructions, so I ask Angie all the time, just tell me, what I can do to make you happy and I'll do it, because I'm stupid, I'm not gonna figure it out on my own, okay? Well, this is the same theory with your clients. Tell me what you're looking for in an agent. Tell me what you're looking for. Don't do another presentation without asking that question, okay? The next thing is, and I found this out by mistake actually. I was doing a listing presentation, it was in my farm years ago, and I thought that, and we got the listing, and I asked the seller, thank you for giving the listing, and I just asked, like, what did you see the difference? I always like to know. And he said, I thought he was gonna say, oh, you guys sell so much in here, you're so smart or wonderful, your presentation. He said, no, both you guys were awesome. The agents were good, blah, blah, blah. It was another couple against Angie and myself. The difference was, the very end, you looked me in the eye and said, I appreciate your business. That, you won it. It was tied until you did that. I thought, what? You mean all this stuff I did meant nothing? I mean, I thought it was better, maybe I wasn't, in his eyes. Only looking in the eye and saying, I appreciate your business. How many people, when you go out in life these days, how many people tell you they appreciate your business? You gotta tell people you appreciate their business. It's even more important if you're really successful and busy. Because guess what? They think you're just a dot on their radar. But when you look in the eye and say, your business means a lot to me, I really appreciate it. That means a lot to them coming from an agent that's doing a lot of business. Now, it's also important, if it's your first deal or your third deal, it's still important to say that. You always need to thank them for the business. Always, 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 okay? Okay. Next thing I want to talk about. So, this is something that I'd heard years ago, but I really like it. And this is something that at some point every client needs to hear, okay? Because it's the best thing we can do for our clients, okay? You need to tell them that your goals for them in this transaction are, I want to make you money, I want to save you money, okay, and I want to protect you. Those are the feelings that they want. I want to make money, save money, and I will protect you. That needs to be your mantra. Everybody needs to hear that. I'm going to make you money, save you money, and protect you. If you leave here today and you don't have that memorized, then you missed the point of this training. There's nothing more important I'm going to say than clients need to hear that. And time again, people on our team, I know you've heard that before, this is a review for you. But it's really important that you tell them all of these things, okay? So again, we got something, a question we ask everyone, a statement we make, and then another statement we make at some point in our presentation. And you can kind of weave that in wherever you want to, but make sure that don't leave a presentation without saying it, okay? Those are really key points of what to put in there. Okay, so that's kind of the end of what I have here today. And I try to keep the trainings to an hour or less because I'm a strong believer the mind can only absorb what the seat can endure. But are there questions on things? Yeah. Oh yeah, hit off, yeah. Yeah, absolutely, we got plenty of time.